You can know somebody your whole life, especially growing up like on the Navajo Nation, and not know they don't have access to electricity, because in some ways it's almost normalized to it. You just assume it's traditional, you know? So I grew up on the Navajo Nation, and most of my examples will be from the Navajo Nation, and that's because that's the context I know the best. So for a simple example, we can first start off with where people live on the Navajo Nation. A lot of the livelihood of the Navajo Nation depended in the past on livestock and crops. And so a lot of people live very dispersed. They don't live in towns or cities like most people do. They live in very remote areas that are hard to reach. The transmission line, or the grid, works best for people who live clustered together, like close together, but it becomes inefficient when you live far away from each other. The utility will pay for the connection if there's a density of 8 houses per mile. And so that means that if you don't have 8 other people within that mile, then the cost falls on the homeowner. And the cost ranges from like $35,000 to more. And I don't know anybody who's got that kind of money lying around. So let's just think about the Navajo Nation. We've got coal, we've got oil, and we've got solar potential. You would assume, I guess, that most Navajo people would have access to electricity because of the rich energy potential. And yet, that's not the case. And it gets you thinking about, okay, well, where does this electricity go? Where do these resources that are taken from the Navajo Nation, where do they end up? And a lot of the times they end up in large cities like in California or Nevada or in Phoenix, Arizona. And so all of those resources aren't being used for the Navajo people. They're being sent elsewhere. And so you have these people living next to this huge transmission line system that cannot get connected. So they use diesel generators, they use car batteries to have electricity or lighting. And I think part of that has to do with the history. Like, you can't really get into energy poverty without looking at the history of Native American tribes, especially on the Navajo Nation. Even from the beginning, it's about energy. Because the United States government wanted to allow the Navajo Nation to extract oil and resources, and saying, this is what you have and this is how you should use it to benefit us instead of benefiting your own people. And so I think that's really where it started and why it continues to grow, like energy poverty on tribal nations.